We often think of birds as benign, graceful creatures, alighting on the forefingers of princesses, and singing songs to one another as the sun crests the horizon. When in danger, these skittish creatures take to the air and find safety in the sky, or maybe a tall tree. But not every bird is so gentle, and not every bird flees from a fight. One bird breaks the cultural standards of birdliness and kicks elegance to the curb. But strength and aggression is often a path to survival in life, death, and taxonomy. Welcome back to Life, Death, and Taxonomy. It's 30 minutes of interesting animal info. And I'm Joe.
And I'm Carlos.
And today we're talking about what is called the most dangerous bird in the world. But more on the truth of that later. Intrigue. Stay to the end, why don't you?
So we are doing our first ever topical episode.
Yes, this is breaking news.
We literally pivoted at the last second from the animal we were going to do.
Yes.
To this one when we learned about the news, which we will talk about later.
Yes.
In case you haven't heard it.
If you've been living under a rock, you'll find out why we're talking about it. And literally, if you're listening to this when it comes out, we recorded this yesterday.
Yeah, the day of.
Yeah.
This is crazy. We're basically reporters at this point.
We're at least aggregates.
But yeah, we are talking about the cassowary.
Mm-hmm.
The southern cassowary in particular.
To be precise.
If you don't live under a rock, you know exactly what this thing looks like. But I will talk about what it looks like in a second. But for now, let's talk about where it lives in the taxonomic area. You like it. You love it. You want some more of it. Key Largo, Montego, baby, why don't we go down to Kingdom Animalia?
You like it, you love it, you're in it. Got it. No, that's not it.
Yeah.
You know it, you love it, you're in it.
The phylum, Chordata. It's a bird. It's got a spine. And because it's a bird, the class is Aves. And this is where we go into uncharted territory.
Yes.
This is where everything starts to start with a C. The order is Cassowariiformes.
Okay.
The family is Cassowariidae.
Mm-hmm.
The genus is Cassowarius. And the species is Cassowarius. But it's also called the Sruthio Cassowarius.
Sruthio!
That was going to be one of my nicknames.
All right.
Sruthio. For those Steven Spielberg fans. But we're going to call it here the dastardly and deadly diurnal dinosaur.
Diurnal?
Mm-hmm.
Because it hangs out during the day?
Hangs out during the day. Also, Biggie Talls.
Biggie Bird.
Yeah, and then Sruthio was my third one.
Okay.
But if you have not yet heard the news about this bird and a certain Florida man, and you haven't looked up a picture of this insane-looking bird, brace yourself because this is an adventure.
Okay.
Open your mind's eye. All right. So cassowaries are massive, flightless birds. Start in your brain with an ostrich. The basic body shape of an ostrich. Mm-hmm. Although cassowaries have proportionately small or larger bodies and shorter necks.
Yes.
So cassowaries are covered in black, bristle-looking feathers all over. It looks like
a feather duster.
It looks like spiny fur.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like a softer porcupine.
Like gelled, punk hair.
Yeah. Or it's like slicked back though.
Yeah.
And so it kind of looks like this big bristly puffball. So now onto the head. This is where things get interesting. It's like black feathers. Who cares? Every bird has black feathers. Literally every bird.
Except for all the ones that don't.
Except for the ones that don't have black feathers. So cassowary, has a featherless neck and face and head.
Like a turkey.
Mostly featherless. Its skin is bright blue. And we talked about how much I love blue things. Although green's I guess would be my favorite color. But it's just weird that it's bright. It's got bright blue skin and it's scaly. Imagine the turkey head situation. This weird, patchy, dry looking skin, but instead of being red or pink, it is bright blue. On its neck is a bright red turkey gobble. I couldn't find the exact name of this on the cassowary, but it's called a gobble on a turkey.
I heard something like, I think it might be called that. Like gobble.
Yeah, it has to be. But you say that a turkey gobbles, like that's the sound that it makes. And we're going to talk about how that's not the sound that the cassowary makes.
It sure doesn't.
So it has blue head, and it's got a relatively long neck. And then it's just got this down the middle, this scaly pouch of flesh that's wagging from its gullet. And it's bright red. So we already have some distinct colors here. It has gorgeous amber eyes, and its eyelashes go for miles.
That seems cumbersome.
It doesn't have eyelashes. It has eye feathers.
Interesting.
But if you looked at, there's one picture on Wikipedia of this thing looking directly in the camera, and you're like, dang. It just has like these really like
breathtaking
symmetrical eyelashes that like curl up and go out, and it's got like these really piercing amber eyes. It's like crazy because it's the only thing that you could describe as beautiful for this bird. Its beak is relatively short and triangular shaped, so it's, or conical, you could even say. It's meant for pecking things. It's not hooked like a falcon, and it's not flat like a duck, and it's not shoe-billed like the shoe-bill.
It's like an ostrich beak.
Yep, it's like an ostrich
maybe a
beak.
little thinner.
So if all of this isn't weird enough, the southern cassowary has a giant casque on its head that can grow up to 7 inches high. So a casque, I mean, it's like a big fin or crest. It looks like a dinosaur, specifically the Corythosaurus. If you look that up, you will see a dinosaur with a big thing on its head.
Crest.
A bit. So it goes, it goes vertically from the where the beak all the way to the back, and it's rounded up top. So yeah, it looks like a crest. The casque is keratinous, Potts. No, it's just keratinous. That means it's made out of keratin. And it's covered in grayish skin. So you have a blue head, red gobble, black beak, and then grayish.
Sometimes orangish.
Yeah, that's weird. Did you see its eyelashes?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's weird that one was orange. All the other ones I saw were like gray. But the casque itself is filled with fibers that they theorize may help it make the craziest bird noise you've ever heard.
Oh, boy.
Are you going to talk about the crazy bird noise?
Nope, go for it.
All right, well, we're going to insert it right here.
Yeah, that was a bird.
We were talking about it earlier, and I was like, if I wasn't directly looking at it or didn't know what was going on, to be like, there's an actual triceratops in the other room.
It's a living dinosaur.
That is an amazing sound. So apparently they still don't know how this would possibly help it, but they've theorized that the Corythosaurus, which is the dinosaur I was talking about earlier, used that as a reverberation technique to amplify the sound that it made.
There is a similar toucan, or there's a toucan that does a similar thing. A type of toucan that has like a
big nose schnoz.
It has the regular toucan beak, but then there's just like a half portion of the top beak that comes out, and that's also a casque, and it makes a signature like loud sound.
Huh.
So they think it's the same situation.
Well, some other theories for why it has the casque, because the southern cassowary has the largest one. The northern cassowary has a smaller one, and then the last one, I forgot what it was called, the one in the middle. That one doesn't have one at all. And then there are a couple of extinct varieties of this order. But so some other theories for what they use the casque for are brushing the undergrowth aside, because it lives deep in the jungle, which I'll talk about in a second. It also it spends most of its time under trees that drop large fruit and seeds.
Headwear.
So maybe
hard hat area.
It is a cask.
Yeah.
Like, like that's, I think in Spanish it's casquette or something like that is helmet.
Huh.
But by having this kind of shark fin on top of its head,
spongy.
Things can ramp off of it instead of splatting directly on top of its head. But it's made out of keratin, so it's hard.
It's spongy material covered in hard keratin, like an M&M.
It's the other way around. It's
hard keratin on the middle.
It's skin, and then keratin, and then fibers.
Okay.
So it doesn't. I don't know if you could just squish it.
I don't know. I've heard it described as spongy.
I think that if you looked at it, if you looked at like a wireframe of it, it would look like spongy just because of all the fibers going through it. Yeah, porous. But the keratin is harder. So they also have powerful long legs like an ostrich, and they have feet that are filled with murder weapons. Murder claws. The middle toe has a 5-inch sharp claw in it, which it uses to kick and disembowel things.
That's fun.
But I did say it was a massive flightless bird. It's a little bit vague.
Yeah.
It's like, is it as big as a man? That's pretty big. Is it as big as an ostrich?
It's in between those two things.
Is it?
No.
No, it's not.
We'll talk about it. Here. I think I know what can help. Maybe the listener's favorite part of the show until proven otherwise. Welcome to Measure Up, which is the part of the show where I give Carlos questions in a quiz format, where we end up, by the end of it,
having no idea what's going on at all anywhere.
By the end of it, we end up just telling you in relatable terms how big this animal is and other important dimensions.
Sure.
It's also the part of the show that's introduced by you, the listener, sometimes when you send some in. But this week we've had several sent in by Chris from Play Comics.
Thanks, Chris.
Saving us from the cold, bleak, no intro.
Depths of obscurity.
Yeah, yes. So thank you, Chris. Check out Play Comics. He also does a show called Meddling Kids, which is family friendly and about Scooby-Doo. So check him out. Without further ado, the listener's favorite part of the show.
Measure up.
That was excellent, and for some reason I feel like a craving for menthol.
Ricola.
Ooh, minty. That was minty fresh.
My cough is already going away.
Okay, let's get right into it. Female weight. Females, like in many bird species, are larger than males. They can be as big as 2 meters or 6.6 feet.
It is very tall.
That's also 6.5 feet for your purposes, if you like.
It will be. You can bet on it.
How many cassowaries would go into the total height of the largest didgeridoo ensemble ever, assuming they were all the average human height and stacked on top of each other?
The ensemble being the people, or the ensemble being the didgeridoos?
The ensemble being the people.
Okay. Man, I would like to be there just to feel the vibrations of the didgeridoos.
I tried to find it was on a Guinness World Records, and the only comment was on the page was, "How do I see this?" And no answer. No answer.
How could you possibly get the world's largest didgeridoo ensemble together and not at least snap a video?
I'm sure somebody took a video, but here's a hint. The ensemble took place at Digfest in 2006 in Devon, which is in the UK.
I don't want to laugh at it. Didgeridoos are difficult instruments to learn, so if you are pursuing that instrument, then more power to you.
Yeah,
more breath to you, for real.
If all of them were circular breathing, that's a very hard skill to learn.
Yeah, that is insane.
So that hint does tell you that the average height is the average height in the UK. So there you go.
Or they just got a bunch of people from Australia to come to the UK. I'm sure that a lot of Australians
when I looked up the average height in to do the calculations, I looked up the UK average height.
I'm going to assume that the average didgeridoo player or didgeridoo master is a man
Okay.
for the purposes of this.
You also have to assume that I assumed that.
Yeah. And then I'm going to assume that the average male height in the UK is 5 feet 8 inches.
Okay.
Seems a little bit short. I'm going to say 5 feet 10 inches. And I'm going to say there were 50 of them.
Okay.
So we're talking about 300 feet. If they're all stacked on top of each other, you said?
Yes.
Okay, 300 feet. We're looking at 6.5 feet for the cassowary, and I'm going to say 45.
45 cassowaries?
45 cassowaries.
So let's kind of tackle some of your assumptions. I guess I'm a little bit more progressive than you because I assumed that women can be didgeridoo players too.
They certainly can be, but I assume that the average didgeridoo player is not. That there are more male didgeridoo players than female ones.
Who could say? But I averaged male and female height.
So it shorter.
Came out to 5.5.
Really?
Yeah, so the average height in the U.S. for a man is 5'9". So you thought the average UK man was taller than...
By an inch. I don't know what the average height of them... I knew it was between 5'7" and 6 foot.
So there was also over 200 people in this ensemble.
Oh, wow.
So
all of my... I had to make 3 or 4 guesses, and they were all wrong.
The answer was 199 birds.
Okay.
So
still would love to hear 200 people playing the didgeridoo at the same time.
Yeah,
I feel like you'd go away changed.
I feel like your organs would vibrate.
Yeah, it'd be like going to a POD concert.
Sure.
My organs vibrated at that concert. It
was
was painful. I actually didn't like it.
You get used to it.
Do you? No,
Yeah.
Not when it's like the kick and bass. Like it's not sustained.
I didn't usually whenever I would go to a concert, I didn't like it for the first couple songs, and then got used to it. Anyway, female weight.
Female cassowary weight.
Female cassowary weight is on the upper end, 58.5 kilograms or 130 pounds.
Good, nice even number.
Yeah. So how many of the heaviest chicken egg ever recorded go into the weight of a cassowary?
Huh.
Here's a hint. The egg was laid by a hen in Vineland, New Jersey in 1958, I think. In the 1950s. We haven't broken this record since the 1950s. Interesting.
130. I'm thinking that egg was a pound.
100% correct.
Really?
Yeah.
No.
The egg was a pound.
Yes.
It was 456 grams, which is a little over 16 ounces.
Oh, I was like pretending to heft an egg in my hand, and I was like, what would a pound egg feel like? I've lifted an ostrich egg. That was like 10 pounds.
Ostrich eggs can be like on average 5 pounds.
You can stand on those. They're very hard.
Well, you can like from end to end squeeze a chicken egg pretty hard. But if you do it in the middle,
yeah,
then it'll break. But if you go from the top to the bottom, I don't know why that is. When it's coming out, the pressure is in the middle. Weird.
It's a perfect structure for getting out for if you're a chick.
Yeah, I guess so. So that's it. You got 1 out of 2 correct.
That might be one of...
I think maybe if you just examine your prejudices, you'll get it more correct in the future.
We both made assumptions, and neither one of us knows if the other is correct.
Accurate, yeah.
All right, let's talk about where they live. I mentioned Aborigines, and you mentioned didgeridoos, which can only mean that the word Australia is going to be said. So I'll say it in a little bit. Cassowaries live on the island of New Guinea, which includes Papua New Guinea and Indonesia, the section, because it's split in half, like Haiti and the Dominican Republic on Hispaniola. Mm-hmm. It also lives...
It's the same shape, too. You can see why
it's very similar.
Columbus made a mistake.
And he's like, I must be in Papua New Guinea. It's like, no, you're in Hispaniola. And it's like, well, you guys are all slaves now. Either way, you guys are. So they also cassowaries also live on many of the islands in southeastern Asia, but mostly in the south of southeastern Asia. So they don't live in like the Philippines or anything like that, but they live very close to Australia, and they also live in northern Australia.
Mm-hmm.
They like to hang out in dense jungles and are normally shy, leaving areas long before humans even know that they're there.
Yes.
So let's talk about a little bit of their behavior. They are described as, I saw, quote, this was funny, running at full tilt through the vegetation, brushing saplings aside, and occasionally careening into trees, which is probably why that cask is helpful.
Yes.
They eat fallen fruit, as I mentioned before, so they're partially frugivorous, but I don't understand how you could be considered a frugivore if you don't only eat fruit.
Just mostly fruit. There's even a plum named after them. Are you going to talk about that?
Nope.
There's a cassowary plums, which are like these blue plums that look delicious, but apparently they're not great for eating unless you're a cassowary.
Huh. It's odd.
Because they swallow them whole. Maybe they taste bad.
Got to get those nutrients, but don't want to taste it.
Right.
They're really omnivorous. They eat insects, frogs, fish, snails. They also eat flowers, fungi. They eat small rodents and dead things, carrion. They are keystone species of the rainforest because they eat fruit. The seeds go into their stomach. They are not digested. They pass through as excrement in some other place of the rainforest, and that's how these fruit trees propagate.
Yeah, they're very important for that.
Yeah, if you were to get rid of all of them, then the fruit trees would no longer be able to.
Especially those cassowary plums, apparently.
Really?
Yeah.
That must be their favorite, even though they don't like the taste.
I don't know. That's just an assumption. Don't quote me on that.
Males are also usually the ones to stick around and incubate the eggs. He'll also protect them for about 9 months after they hatch. So they're good fathers, but the females are not good mothers. Also, the females are just aggro.
Yes.
They cannot stand other females. Males are like, fine, whatever. There's another male there. It's okay. He's cool. He's Tim. But the females they can't stand even seeing another female in the area. Even when mating, males will be okay with other males being around. But it does not go the same for the fairer sex.
It does seem to be a society that's turned on its head compared to other animals, where the females will actually have several families at once, like several chicks from different males. Where usually it's the other way around, like especially in mammals, where a male will like try to propagate his lineage as much as possible, and the females raise the chicks.
But from what I understood is that the females will sometimes, like a male will be mating, and then will be chased off by another male, and then that male will mate, and so she could have chicks from either one. Well, but she will not. Like a lot of times in animals, females will congregate, and then males have to like kind of separate them out.
Right.
But instead, it's kind of the opposite.
She checks them out.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Here's some fast facts before we get on to the major fact. Cassowary meat is very tough. According to Australian generals, a guy named John Vader reports that the cassowary should be cooked with a stone in the pot. When the stone is ready to eat, so is the cassowary. So don't eat these. You'll break your teeth, apparently.
Huh.
Cassowaries live for 40 to 50 years. So birds live for a long time. Birds and tortoises.
Yeah.
And for a time, their feathers were extremely valuable. They look weird, so people breed them as exotic pets.
Yes.
Which often goes awry. But it never goes awry. Does it, Joe?
Let's talk about that. welcome to the major fact, the majorest of facts in this episode. So, strap in for a little story. This is what's been in the news in the past couple days. On a sunny Friday morning in Gainesville, Florida, a call was made to local police reporting that 75-year-old Marvin Hayos was attacked by a large bird. A second call was placed by somebody else, saying the same thing. So, police and emergency services arrived on the scene to find a man gravely injured by one of the two cassowaries on his property. The birds were corralled as Hayos was transported to the hospital, where he later died of his injuries. This event, last week, was the second time one of these birds has killed a person since April 6th, 1926, when 16-year-old Philip McLean tried to kill the bird with his little brother when they found it on their property in Australia. He fell to the ground and the bird kicked him in the neck, cutting the jugular vein. Pretty gnarly stuff.
But I also read somewhere that cassowaries kill the native inhabitants of Papua New Guinea a lot. We just don't report it because they're...
Well, there's that comes from, I think, a book by Ernest Thomas Gillard, which was written in 1958. And it's like, historically, Aborigines were killed by these things. But let's talk about why this bird is so dangerous. It's called the most dangerous bird in the world for a number of reasons. Their size makes them formidable, even for adult humans. They have powerful legs, like you said, that allow them to jump 7 feet in the air and run 30 miles an hour.
6.5-foot bird jumping its full height into the air and running at 30 miles an hour.
Yeah, so legs that powerful that can lift a 160-pound or 130-pound animal to move like that could probably deliver some pretty powerful kicks. And it do. And these kicks are, again, augmented by those 3-toed feet that have straight dagger-like claws that are able to stab and slice enemies.
Oh, we should put the dialogue that Alan Grant from the beginning of Jurassic Park when he's talking about how a raptor kills people.
I was going to make the joke when you were describing it earlier and be like, that's not very scary. It's kind of like a big turkey. So when they're fighting, they use these claws to when they aren't fighting, they use these claws to dig and uncover fallen fruit in the forest underbrush because they eat large fruit that fall, like, in between twigs and branches and thickets. So they clear it away and eat the fruit. So when they attack, they may jump up and kick a person around the midsection. They can jump it high enough to kick a full-grown man in the chest.
So they can jump 7 feet in the air, so they can jump high enough to miss you.
Their kick is usually a downward kick. That's just the way that their legs work. However, with both fatalities, the most dangerous blows came after a person fell to the ground. So dogs and other animals that are low to the ground are vulnerable to kicks, and they have been kicked and killed. So that Ernest Thomas Gillard he's an ornithologist, and he wrote a book called Living Birds of the World in 1958. And he is quoted saying, "The inner or second of the 3 toes is fitted with a long, straight, murderous nail, which can sever an arm or eviscerate an abdomen with ease. There are many records of natives being killed by this bird."
A murderous nail. That's very dramatic of him.
So the raw destructive power he describes seems to be a bit overblown, because there's not many accounts of them like lopping off limbs with these nails, especially considering they've only killed 2 people in nearly a century. But they are dangerous, and they can be aggressive.
Well, they've killed only 2 people that we've reported.
Right, that we know of. Recorded events. So a study in 2003 looked at all of the recorded attacks throughout history and found that a total of 221 attacks occurred on people and domestic animals. 150 were against humans. Many of these attacks were food-driven. The birds were either being fed by people, or they had been fed by people before, or they were expecting food, or they were defending natural food sources. Only 15% were cases of self-defense, and only 7% were involved in defending chicks or eggs. So they're very food-driven. If you get between them and food, they might kick you. and it might be bad.
Well, usually they're shy. Usually they're like, oh, I think people might be on the wind, and then
Yes.
they leave
So,
at 30 miles an hour.
like always, like a lot of the time, dangerous animals become dangerous because we feed them, or because you're feeding wild animals, which you're not supposed to do.
Right.
Because it gets them used to you being a food source. And then if they approach you, they don't get that food, and they get agitated.
And then they see you as prey when you turn around and cower and shake.
I don't think that's necessarily the case for the bird. Definitely for bears, though. But also, there's a theory that like stomping or like running seems to trigger this kill instinct in them, and they think that when two rivals come up against each other, they will do stomping. They will stomp around, and it like triggers this fight. So they think running has this stomping.
So you got to tiptoe
feel.
away.
Yeah, but then there's also studies that say most of the attacks happen to people who are standing or walking, not running. So it's hard to say.
Well, people fall down on the ground. That's a big stomp.
That's true. The two deaths were people that fell, and one of them was like in Gainesville, the most recent one on Friday. They believe that he may have been feeding them when he fell. So he's a 75-year-old man. So like, you lose your balance and you fall, and that may have just like, A, they're food driven at this moment, and B, they are startled by this stomp, so that they go into attack mode.
Did you say that he was a breeder?
He was. They think he was breeding them for collectors.
So that I see this as kind of like a cautionary tale of don't keep dangerous exotic pets in your suburban home.
Speaking of that, the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission lists this bird as Class 2 wildlife, along with stuff like wolves, coyotes, jackals, wolverines, and badgers, and bobcats. So Class 2 animals are ones that can be dangerous to humans and require, quote-unquote, substantial experience to safely handle. The only other bird in this class is the ostrich, which is bigger than a cassowary and maybe equally as dangerous.
Probably, I think it's killed more people. I remember when I went to South Africa, them telling us how dangerous ostriches were.
Yeah, I would imagine they're pretty dangerous because they're also huge.
That sounds like the world's most dangerous bird. I don't know why I'm saying the cassowary.
There could be an argument that cassowaries are more aggressive and more like that. They have like a hair trigger attack and instinct.
I guess.
I saw a video of an ostrich attacking a guy, and he just grabbed its neck and head and like held it down, put a towel over it, so it like put a towel over its eyes, and it's like it was still trying to like struggle every once in a while, but it was like more subdued, and it sounds like cassowaries are more tenacious in a fight.
But ostriches are pretty domesticated. Like they're like a lot. They're a food source, and even in the States there are ostrich farms. So maybe after many generations of being domesticated, that whole fight instinct doesn't really get there. But I imagine that a cassowary is not that many generations removed from Papua New Guinea.
Yeah.
And has more of a kill instinct.
Cassowaries are also just completely solitary animals except when mating. So there's not a social...
They're not gregarious.
There's not a social instinct in them.
Also,
I'm not sure about ostriches. Well, maybe we'll cover that later. But I've seen multiple videos of several ostriches together, so I don't know.
I want to tell the Johnny Cash story.
Okay.
Even though we're not doing ostriches. Johnny Cash used to have ostriches on his property because he was one of those rich people that likes to just buy things because he's rich.
Right.
Like Mike Tyson.
Yeah, okay.
Who had tigers. May still have tigers, who knows. But apparently he was going out to one of his birds, and it started to like get into attack mode, and he was trying to like beat it back with a branch.
Okay.
And it jumped up and kicked him, slashed him, but it hit his belt. And he was like, if I didn't have this sturdy belt, It would have disemboweled me.
Ugh.
I bet he wrote a song about it.
Maybe.
But yeah.
That's all I got.
Don't mess with birds bigger than you.
Yeah, just in general.
Or don't mess with birds.
Don't mess with animals.
Yeah, unless they're your pets.
Yeah, unless
Then
they're...
you could totally mess
Well,
with
unless they're pets and they're supposed to be pets.
Yeah, unless they're supposed to be pets.
Yeah.
I guess we're kind of blurring the line here, aren't we?
Dogs only, please. That's a personal...
No cats, no parrots, no fish. Don't mess with them. Just your dogs.
Yes.
So for you out there in Podcastia, charge through life. Always be ready for danger. And stay away from strange humans like the cassowary in Life, Death, and Taxonomy.
Hey LDT listeners, thanks for listening all the way to the end. Before we hit you with a blooper, I just want to tell you, leave a review, visit us on social media like Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. We are LD Taxonomy everywhere. If you have episode ideas, send us an email at ldtaxonomy@gmail.com. And of course, always send in measure up intros. Thanks for listening and engaging.
Life, Death, and Taxonomy is my favorite in the world podcast.
I think we should say birdliness more often. The bastion of birdliness!
Cleanliness is next to birdliness.